united free for liberty together we'll always stand. Amin had another appointment with magnanimity. This one came in the form of a decree that God airmailed to him by way of a dream. Accused of milking the economic cow of the country without feeding it, the Ugandan Asians were given 90 days to leave the country. Their pockets empty, as their ancestors had been when they came to build the railway. Now, to the next phase, Operation Mafuta Mingi. In droves, people came, queued up, their ethnic and religious stripes clearly displayed. It all happened so quickly, some people found themselves propelled from houseboys to pharmaceutical tycoons. Then the shortages set in and prices quadrupled. Amin said, "Where is the governor of the National Bank? Print more money or you are dead." And he died. The good old watering holes for the illicit Nguli or Nubian gin now really began to flourish. From time to time, I too would walk in and take my place among the customers for the cheap and lethal drink. Did you hear about so-and-so? Yes. How sad. Baron Kawadwa was his name. Playwright. Only recently he'd returned from a festival in Nigeria. Members of the State Research Bureau arrived at the National Theatre in broad daylight. For every scene he wrote, another tooth was knocked out of his gums. At the end of the exercise, his body was soaked in acid. "Nalongo, give us another drink. Life is too short." News of the latest victims would be exchanged on Radio Katwe, the grapevine telegraph through which people got the news behind the news. Hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Yes, how sad. It had become the refrain, this new riddle. Hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Yes. How sad. Think about it, friends. Especially those of you who may be lucky enough to have been spared the luxury of growing up in countries where no one should. In the early days, the sight of a dead body on your way to school was something you talked about for a long time to come. Time passed, things changed. We found ourselves haunted by images of people shot and abandoned for the vultures. Men with their genitals stuffed into their mouths like Cuban cigars. Others burnt with acid. Pregnant women, bellies ripped apart with bayonets. Alleged foes, naked and chained, paraded on national television before facing the firing squad. Hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Yes. How sad indeed. My watering hole visits were reduced now because of my obligations, studies at the university, and rehearsals for a play. But the last time I had been, Nalongo, the bartender, talked to me about her daughter. She was dating a soldier. The soldier had money, and she wanted him to take her shopping. One day, the daughter got her wish. The soldier said she bugged him too much, so he drove her to Namman, the forest. He said you wanted to stop. Let's go. It was getting dark, so he flashed his torch and led her deeper into the forest. They arrived, and there they were, piles of dead bodies all over. Some only newly unloaded, some only dead for a matter of hours. He ordered her to have her pick, from shoes to handbags, watches and necklaces, then forced her to fill the trunk with valuables and dropped her home. At least she's alive. She's joined the living dead. We all kept quiet, except for one gentleman who stood up and said, "Today it is me, tomorrow it is you. They can't go on killing us yesterday and mounting our daughters tomorrow. When my time comes, I'll tell them, you can take my body, but not my spirit." A few months later, our play, The Fire Spreads, opened at the National Theatre. A different kind of fire was spreading. During the second act, I was backstage putting my costume on, when all of a sudden, I heard a thunder-like sound. Zwoo! The theater was instantly half empty. More deafening sounds. Zwoo! Zwoo! The Tanzanian army and the Ugandan exiles were closing in on both Kampala and Entebbe. 8 years and 500,000 deaths later, Idi Amin had fallen. A new provisional government was in power. The nightmare was over. Bewa sikwakulwa feva wayo bulamu nevyona. Hallelujah, kulwa Uganda, batiwanga balwana. Baba sula mama bom, baba kuwa mama sasi, baba tema mu fifi bona. Hallelujah, kulwa Uganda, batiwanga balwana. Exactly 68 days later, Professor Rule, the first provisional president, was put under house arrest and sent into exile. Obote's stalwarts now started to appear in prominent government posts. The honeymoon was over. For us, it was a time to scream, if that's the only way we could be heard. Men, women, and children, with the women at the forefront. Some, with their babies strapped to their backs, all took to the streets, singing, Fetwagala lule, obatufa tufe, atamagala gende. Fetwagala lule, obatufa tufe, atamagala gende. The soldiers gathered around them all over the city, from their mansions to City Square and then Tebe Road. Their guns did the talking. But the massacres did not stop us. All over the city, barricades were built and fires lit. My friend Richard and I had been at the forefront of the demonstrations and against the return of Milton Obote. We gathered a few friends and at night lit up the city with pamphlets to keep the voice of protest alive. Campus politics too was now fully revived. Lumumba Hall was our first experiment. Through some kind of alliance, all our candidates came to power in a resounding victory. The University Guild presidency was the next. Me, who'd never held a single office in my entire school life, was now propelled into a spokesperson for the voices of dissent. If Obote ever comes back to power, that will be the time for me to become a Sun Minister. One afternoon, I get into Lumumba Hall, and the custodian friend hastily beckons me to the desk. The bad boys were here. Intelligence officers, probably from Impala House. They asked for your name and room number. And she went up and waited a long while. It knows that important to him. Keep it to yourself. I'll lie low for a while, make myself more scarce. Then came news that Gusta Msubuga, a prominent businessman who'd funded a great deal of our University Guild presidency campaign, was shot. Rushed to hospital by his family. They shot him again in his hospital bed, but he still defied death. His family finally smuggled him across the border to a Kenyan hospital. Obote's well-oiled machine was getting stronger and more vicious by the day. Lamek Ntambi, another popular politician, was the next target. I helped him escape. Who would the next target be? Obote himself has finally landed on Ugandan soil. It's time for me to go into some sort of self-imposed exile across the border in Nairobi. In Nairobi, I met Robert Seremba, the Ugandan playwright, actor, director, turned freedom fighter, was one of those who were sent back into exile exactly 68 days after they helped overthrow Amin. Noble, humorous, generous, almost reformed. I remember asking him once, "How about another play?" He replied, "I am in a play right now, except in this one, the main characters must die." And he died, a brutal and tragic death that raised questions about foul play and betrayal. I turned to his friend, David Rubadiri, and through him, I started teaching school in Kilungu. My name is George Boanika. I'm in charge of English language, as well as literature and drama. Although I did take to Kilungu like fish to water, I found myself homesick within no time. On November 28th, I'll be 22. The thought of my first Christmas away from home and family was far from endearing. The elections in Uganda were hardly a fortnight away. Take advantage of the confusion. I said to myself, soon the elections will be over, and should Obote be firmly entrenched, it's going to be far more difficult to enter, let alone leave the country. I decided to go home for Christmas. As the bus approached the border at the crack of dawn on the 5th of December, I began to have serious doubts about my decision. There were rumors of lists and photographs on the Ugandan end. My heart was throbbing like a drum as I whispered my last prayer before going through Ugandan customs and immigration. And bingo! I'd gone through both in record time. I was standing firmly on Ugandan soil. A few days later, we drove towards Kampala. The closer we got to Kampala, the more tense I felt. This was election day. Minutes after my arrival at the campus, Paulo Muwanga, an Obote stalwart, issued a disturbing proclamation. Nobody is allowed to release the election results except me. If you are caught doing so, you'll either pay a fine of 500,000 shillings or go to prison for 5 years. or both? That evening, as I walked towards Lumumba Hall, a student I once considered a friend confronted me with great hostility. Why didn't you stay and vote in Moise, Kenya? I was with two undergraduate friends of mine who remained quiet. Their party, the DP, had already won 70% of the seats unofficially. Why didn't you stay and vote in Moise, Kenya? I do not bend the words with fools. I don't even have the time to waste. He walked away, accompanied by a chorus of derisive laughter. As we approached Lumumba Hall, do you see what I see? Two military jeeps. Under cover of darkness, they won't know who we are. They're empty. They seem to be splitting into little groups, traversing the corridors, knocking on doors. Who are they looking for? I'll make just one more stop to say hello to John and his wife, and then I'll be out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.